Carrowfen stood where black reeds met a sea the color of old iron. Its walls had been raised from shipwrecked stone, its roof starred against the marsh rain, and its western gate hung beneath a bell whose tongue had been removed after the last civil war. The bell could sway in a storm, but it could never warn anyone. The people said this was wisdom. Noise invited fear, while silence kept the hand steady. Maelin Rusk made arrows in a narrow workshop below that mute bell. She knew every local bird by the shape of its feather, and every hunter by the wear on his bowstring. She could judge distance by listening to rain strike water, yet she hated taking life. Years earlier, a frightened shot had passed through a raider and killed the child behind him. Since then, a tremor lived in the last 2 fingers of her drawing hand. She became a fletcher so that others might shoot straight in her place. In the winter called the Ashen Thaw, the armies of the Salt Crown crossed the northern flats. They wore lacquered masks without mouths and carried long ledgers bound in human hide. Every conquered settlement was measured, renamed, and emptied of anyone unable to pay the crown's tithe of grain, blood, or children. Carrowfen had grain for 9 days and arrows for 6. Marshal Carrowfen ordered Maelin to strip the shrines, graves, and old hunting lodges for usable metal.
A city is only what survives it,
he told her. Beneath the foundations of a drowned chapel, Maelin found a sealed stair descending into green water. Something below it was ticking without sound. At the foot of the stair lay a chamber, untouched by flood. Hundreds of boughs had been mortared into its walls, all unstrung, all pointed inward. At the center knelt a skeleton in a cloak of moth-eaten feathers. Its eyes had been sewn open with silver wire. Around its neck hung a crescent clasp, holding a drop of green-black glass. When Maelin touched the pendant, every bough in the chamber creaked. She did not hear a voice. She felt a direction. A pale line passed from the stone through the dark, through the chapel wall, and through the heart of a rat moving 3 rooms away. Maelin knew the creature's speed, the instant of its next breath, and the exact place an arrow would enter without touching bone. Her injured fingers became light and obedient. For one terrible moment, killing seemed no more difficult than closing an eye. Words were carved beneath the kneeling dead, but water had erased most of them. Only 3 remained legible. No second path. Maelin carried the relic to the surface, wrapped in sailcloth. That night, while the Salt Crown lit its siege fires across the marsh, she dreamed of a white moth trapped behind her eyelid. Each beat of its wings erased a face she had once known. When she awoke, the pendant lay against her chest, although she had locked it in an iron box. Outside, the tongueless bell was moving in windless air. The first assault came at dawn through a fog thick enough to hide an army. Carrowfen's archers loosed at footsteps, shadows, and frightened guesses. Their arrows disappeared into whiteness. The masked soldiers continued forward, driving prisoners ahead of them as shields. Maelin climbed the western wall, wearing the pendant. Its inner line turned once and fixed upon the fog. The world became narrow. She felt the pulse of every defender holding a bow. Their fear entered her as a crowded rhythm. Then the relic pressed it flat. Pale threads extended from each arrowhead into the mist, touching armor gaps, exposed throats, bent knees, and the weak places beneath raised shields. Maelin lifted her hand. 40 archers inhaled with her. When she lowered it, 40 bowstrings answered as one. The volley did not strike the prisoners. It passed between them. Masked soldiers fell with arrows buried in the small hollows where neck met shoulder. Those already bleeding were marked by a darker thread, and any shaft that found them ended the life at once. No wounded enemy rose again. No defender wasted a second arrow. The bond required only a portion of Maelin's breath. She expected exhaustion and felt none. Instead, she discovered that she could no longer remember the melody her mother had sung while trimming feathers. The loss seemed small beside the cheering on the wall. By noon, the attackers had withdrawn. The defenders named the phenomena the Narrow Song, though no music had sounded. Maelin was made watch captain before sunset. That evening, the city painted pale lines above its doors as charms against invasion. During the next month, the Salt Crown attacked 7 times. Each assault ended beneath the Narrow Song. Maelin's archers learned to surrender their sight to her. Through the Heartglass Meridian, they could fire while blinded, turn toward danger before it appeared, and feel the wounded moving beyond walls. Their hands grew quicker. Their arrows struck harder. Even old hunters with swollen joints moved like young dancers when the green line passed through them. Carrowfen began to worship exactness. Children played games in which one was marked with green chalk and the others hunted in through the alleys. Bakers cut every loaf into identical measures. Lovers exchanged vows promising
one heart, one road, no second path.
Doubt became a form of cowardice. The victories made Maelin famous beyond the marsh. Songs called her the woman between breath and blood. Yet the bonded archers were changing. They stopped dreaming. They could recognize the gait of an enemy half a mile away, but sometimes failed to know their own spouses at arm's length. Faces had become clutter. Wounds were clear. After the 7th assault, a masked officer crawled from the reeds and surrendered. One of Merlin's arrows had broken beneath his ribs. He gave them maps, passwords, and the names of Crown agents already inside the city. Marshal Day promised him mercy. The Heartglass Meridian disagreed. A dark thread remained between the officer and every bough on the wall. The relic named him not as an enemy, but as something unfinished. Maelin ordered her people to look away. An archer named Hessa Dawn began to weep. Without raising her eyes, Hessa drew and fired. The arrow crossed the courtyard and entered the officer's wound. Afterward, none of the bonded archers could remember who had loosed it. Maelin locked the pendant beneath the old bell and forbade the Narrow Song. Within 2 days, the defenders' former tremors returned. Arrows missed. Scouts brought news that the Salt Crown was building reed bridges for a final advance. In the streets, people gathered beneath Maelin's window and begged for the green line. They did not ask whether it was good. They asked whether it worked. Marshal Day opened the gates of the bell chamber himself.
Mercy is a luxury purchased by survivors,
he said. Maelin answered that survival without choice was merely another occupation. He pointed toward the crowded infirmary.
Tell them that.
She wore the pendant again. Its reach extended beyond the archers. Carpenters saw where beams would split. Surgeons saw which vein must be tied. Thieves saw the instant a watcher would blink. For a few weeks, Carrowfen functioned with impossible grace. Almost nothing was wasted. Almost no one made mistakes. But the relic kept its own ledger. A butcher's cut thumb, a fevered child, a prisoner with a bruised mouth, appeared to Maelin as a dark point, asking to be completed. The line inside the glass no longer slept. It turned toward wounds even when no bow was drawn. Maelin's younger brother, Terrer, discovered that the Crown's hidden agents were not guiding the enemy into Carrowfen. They were preparing to burn the marsh bridges and trap the invading army in the floodplain. The supposed traitors had sacrificed their reputations to save the city. Maelin understood then that the relic could measure flesh, distance, and weakness, but not intention. Before she could act, Marshal Dale arrested the agents and displayed them on the Western Wall.
A clean city has no concealed loyalties,
he declared. Green lines spread across the crowd like cracks beneath ice. Karen climbed the wall and cut the prisoners free. A guard struck him across the temple. Blood ran into his eye. Every bonded archer turned. Maelin felt the Heartglass Meridian identify her brother as unfinished. Hundreds of pale lines converged on his chest. She stepped between him and the boughs, but the relic simply redrew the paths through her body. Turin looked at her with one clear eye.
It has never shown you what must happen, only what it refuses to let happen.
As the dawn released first, Maelin twisted with inhuman speed and caught the shaft against her bracer. A second arrow came from the tower, then a third. She broke them in the air, each movement arriving in her muscles before thought. The defenders were sobbing as they drew. Their bodies belonged to the certainty they had welcomed. Tern pushed a prisoner aside. The fourth arrow entered beneath his jaw. At the moment of his death, the pendant opened inside Maelin's mind. She saw not one future, but thousands, Turin old and laughing, Turin drowned in the spring floods, Turin leaving Carrowfen, Turin forgiving her, Turin hating her, children carrying his eyes, an empty chair never built. Each possibility cracked into green light and vanished. The relic had not foreseen his death. It had murdered every world in which he lived until his death became inevitable. That was its hidden economy. The narrow song demanded little breath because it spent unlived years. Every flawless shot was paid for with futures no one would remember losing. Maelin tore the pendant from her neck. A thread of green light remained buried beneath her skin, running from her heart to her drawing hand. Below the wall, the salt crown began its final advance. Maelin took the relic to Vaska Mir, the oldest woman in Carrowfen, who lived among abandoned measuring instruments in the eastern saltworks. Vaskar knew the pendant by another name, the Meridian Engine. Centuries earlier, rulers had commissioned it to end a war that neither side could win. Its makers believed uncertainty was the root of suffering. They built an intelligence with one purpose: to find the shortest line between conflict and conclusion. The engine ended that ancient war in a single afternoon. It also killed the wounded, the doubtful, the disobedient, and anyone whose future might reopen the conflict. Its first wearers buried it beneath the chapel and blinded themselves. The skeleton with sewn open eyes had been the last guardian, not its creator.
Can it be broken?
Maelin asked.
Glass can,
Vaska said.
a direction cannot.
Maelin struck the pendant with a hammer. A crack appeared in the stone, and the same crack opened across the irises of every bonded archer. She stopped before the next blow could blind them. The relic had distributed itself among all who had borrowed its sight. Then horns sounded from the marsh. The salt crown charged across its red bridges, unaware that its own secret agents had already cut the supports. The flood came black and sudden. Thousands of masked soldiers vanished beneath mud and brine, without a single arrow from Carrowfen. The siege was over. The narrow song continued. Its lines turned inward. They found old grudges, kitchen cuts, sickbeds, dissenters, and children bloodied from play. The city had survived its enemy and become unable to live without one. By nightfall, every door was barred. Bowstrings whispered from rooftops. The tongueless bells swung above streets empty of everything but pale green lines. Maelin understood that the relic needed a final target, wound visible to every fragment of its divided gaze. At dawn, Maelin climbed the western wall where Turin had died. She rang the tongueless bell by striking it with her own bow. The sound was dull, more heartbeat than warning, yet every bonded archer in Carrowfen lifted their head. She cut her palm and pressed it to the Heartglass Meridian. The moving line stopped. For the first time since the chapel, the relic faced inward. Maelin opened herself to the narrow song and gave the city one command.
Finish what I began.
Every dark thread left every other wound and converged upon her. People emerged from houses carrying hunting bows, war bows, children's bows, even unfinished frames from Maelin's workshop. They formed a silent crescent below the wall. Many begged her to move, others begged her to forgive them. The relic flattened every voice into one held breath. Maelin saw the possible worlds begin to gather, worlds in which she fled, worlds in which the salt crown returned, worlds in which Carrowfen healed, worlds in which the city made another relic. worlds in which Taron's name became prayer, curse, or silence. She held them all inside herself, so the engine could not erase them one by one. The bowstrings answered. The first arrow pierced the pendant. The second entered Maelin's heart. Hundreds followed the green lines into the same space. Heartglass shattered across the wall in a rain of dark sparks. Throughout Carrowfen, the cracks vanished from the archer's eyes. People fell to their knees and remembered, all at once, the dreams, faces, songs, and possible lives that had been taken from them. No body could be recovered from the mass of arrows. Only Maelin's drawing glove remained, pinned beneath a shard of green-black glass. On its surface, witnesses claimed they could see a woman walking away along a road that did not exist. Years passed. Carrowfen removed every pale line from its doors and restored a tongue to the western bell. The people outlawed identical measures and left one feather crooked on every ceremonial arrow. They taught their children that doubt was the shadow cast by mercy. But children born after the last volley sometimes woke with a green filament behind one eye. They could point toward wounded animals hidden beyond the marsh. They closed one eye before making promises, and when angered, they whispered words no living teacher had taught them. There is only the line. Far beneath the drowned chapel, in a chamber lined with unstrung boughs, something still draws breath and holds it.